This conference will now be recorded.
We are also recording tonight's meeting, and we will have this video available for replay. I want to also point out to you that our website is the best way to contact us about questions or comments, and our website address is OradelLAvenueBridge.com. Many of you should have, if you live within 500 feet of the project location, or if you are considered a stakeholder, you should have received a flyer in the mail, and you also should have received an email. If I don't have your email address and you would like to be contacted via email, please just go to our website and fill out the comment form there so that I can have a record of your contact information. And that way we can keep you updated about the next phase of the project. And the next phase of the project will include an additional public meeting just like this. So this is only the beginning of our project. Nothing has been set in stone. We are literally at the beginning and looking forward to receiving all of your valuable feedback and input as we look to confirm tonight's purpose and needs statement. So before we get started, while Rick shares his presentation with us, I want to just briefly read through the overview of the information that we sent out for anyone who didn't receive it. Bergen County, the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, and the New Jersey Department of Transportation are hosting tonight's online public information center meeting to inform local residents, officials, businesses, and the general public about the local concept development study to determine appropriate improvements to the Oradell Avenue Bridge over the Hackensack River. The purpose of tonight's online public information center meeting is to inform the public of the condition of the bridge and to solicit input and comment towards the project's purpose and needs statement, which is needed to eventually gain funding for any bridge improvements. This meeting is being conducted in conformance with federal and state regulations. The public is invited and encouraged to comment on this study, and this meeting is open to all members of the public. Written comments about this phase of the project will be accepted through the Contact Us page. Again, the website is OradellAvenueBridge.com, and we will be accepting those written comments through April 26th. And those comments can also be sent to me via mail or email. And I'll have my contact information at the end of the presentation. I will also be using the chat box feature as we go along tonight to communicate with everyone here who's on via computer. I also want to point out that this meeting is going to be very similar if you have participated in our local officials briefing, if you have also participated as a stakeholder, because those were the previous two meetings we had. This meeting, this presentation is very, very similar. So if you're seeing the same information, don't be alarmed. That is very normal. It is just that this is, excuse me, tonight is the public's opportunity to really ask the questions and provide the feedback. But of course, if you've already heard our presentation and you'd like to ask additional questions or comments, you are more than welcome to do so. All right, how are you making out there, Rick, sharing your screen?
I think you just got to give me control and we should be good to go.
I don't see you requesting it. I did make you the presenter.
You did. So, okay, so I should just simply be able to share my screen then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one sec.
At the bottom of your screen, you should see the screen share button.
Yep, it's because it's down too low. Sorry, Nicole.
That's okay.
We'll get there now.
There we go. Great.
Trying to do it on a laptop sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, unfortunately.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so now it should be up.
There we go. I think we're ready to go. So again, I'm going to go on mute and encourage everyone to use the chat box to communicate as the presentation goes along, and we'll get to questions in just a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rick Menino, our project manager. Rick?
Thanks, Nicole, and I apologize for having some difficulties, obviously, connecting. That's part of, I guess, the virtual world that we're now in existence. But as Nicole said, you know, the primary purpose of us having this virtual meeting today is to solicit your input, listen to concerns of the public. As Nicole mentioned, this is not the first meeting that we have held. We've held a meeting with local officials earlier, back in late 2020. And subsequently, we had another meeting with stakeholders, if you will, folks who were within 500 feet of the bridge, plus those that we knew for sure would be impacted, such as the utility owners, et cetera. So as Nicole mentioned, this presentation that I'll go through tonight is literally the same level of detail that we showed to both the local officials and the stakeholders. So we're really at the inception of this project, and the sole purpose of tonight is to listen to your comments and get any questions that we can answer for you tonight answered. And if not, that's the results of the study should answer your questions. So with that, I'll try and do this overview as quickly as practical so that we convey the message, but at the same time, we could use as much of today's minutes that we have to make sure that we hear you and do record your comments and concerns. So as I mentioned, I'm here tonight really just to bring you up to speed on kind of how we got to where we're at right now, how the project came about, a little bit about the local concept development process itself, data that we've already gathered, feedback that we've already gathered, as I mentioned, from the two prior meetings. And as Nicole mentioned, discusses the issue, or not issue, but the project purpose and need document, which is a critical document that we will develop at this phase of the project that we then use to weigh the various advantages and disadvantages of the alternatives that we will look at and identify to make sure that we address that purpose of the project and the needs. And to just kind of go through our upcoming meetings as well, because this is really only the first initial meeting with the general public, if we want to phrase it that way. Quickly, about just a little bit about us. Dewberry was brought on board with our team of Malik and Shearer, Stokes, and TechniQuest. We were engaged by NJTPA, Bergen County, and NJDOT to advance the study, to make sure that we comply with the scope of services and the process outlined in the local concept development study. And that's why we're here tonight. Part of that is to develop a public involvement action plan, and that ensures that we do solicit input from the community and listen and make sure again that we, in fact, I apologize. Cell phones are also a beautiful way to connect with everybody now. So as I mentioned, the team was engaged by TPA, Bergen County, and the NJDOT to study the Oradell Avenue Bridge project and to bring it to fruition at the conclusion of this concept development phase. As I mentioned, NJTPA is a very important component to the NJTPA, DOT, and county team, if you will. Every year, NJTPA solicits projects from the counties. The counties can utilize the money that is made available through NJTPA's local capital project delivery program to investigate projects that they have concern about, that they want studied, that they've identified as critical elements, that they realize they can get some federal funds to look at these projects to get a study done that will then guide how to best resolve the issue at hand. And as I mentioned, and you'll hear throughout this, a key component of that project or of the TPA's program is, in fact, making sure that the public is contacted and making sure that there is collaboration between the public and not only the agencies, but this team. We're really early on in the project's life. We're in the concept development stage. So we are here gathering information, gathering physical data in the field, assessing the condition of the structure itself. Again, making sure that we gather information regarding not only the physical elements, but to make sure that we gather information regarding the environment that the bridge is in, so that we make sure that once we complete the concept development phase, the goal is to leave this phase and graduate the project. We want to make sure that there are no fatal flaws. We want to make sure that the solution that is arrived at, the preliminary preferred alternative, as it's called through the local concept development, that solution has been vetted, is engineering wise the most prudent and effective way to go, and that it has public support, so that when the project does advance further into its preliminary and final design, and ultimately with the goal of advancing to construction, that there are no fatal flaws, that in fact the public has been listened to, and that that purpose for this project and its need has been effectively dealt with. I'm sorry, I jumped off this a little bit. Just to give you an idea, the local concept development phase that we're in right now is about a 2-year process, 2-year duration. Okay, we were selected in June of 2020. Our results of our study and the concept development report that we produce is to be delivered no later than June of next year. So it sounds like a long process, but it's lengthy because we want to make sure, as I said, that when we leave this phase, we have public support and there's no issues on any fatal flaws. The local preliminary engineering phase and final design phases and construction phases, can also be lengthy. Assuming that there's funding in place for these phases, the preliminary engineering phase can be upwards of a year, year and a half, sometimes even 2, depending on the environmental document required for the project. Final design can take another year and a half. So we're out, probably 4 years or so before we're even in construction. So this is the time to get feedback and make sure that that public feedback is accounted for as we move forward with the project. Just another quick little flow chart, kind of show you where we're at. I mean, if I were to draw a horizontal line across this slide, we're just above these developed alternatives. We can't develop alternatives till we gather data, and a big component of that, as you can see, is gathering community input. The project does have federal funds, so therefore we need to comply with the NEPA documentation, which in essence, one of the big components of that, as I showed down here, is that it again also stresses public input and community outreach. So as we're gathering the physical data on the site, that also includes physical information regarding the environment. And as we'll get into, I'll show you some slides. This project site probably as well as I do, if not better, living in the community. And our goal is to make sure that we minimize or avoid impacts to that surrounding environment. A quick overview, we'll get into the project itself. The Oradell Avenue Bridge, as probably everyone on the call knows, is a critical link because Oradell Avenue is a major east-west corridor, extending from Grant Avenue on the east side, crossing the Hackensack River, crossing Kinderkamack, and taking traffic not only from what I'll say is the more heavily residential side of Oradell to downtown and the other residential side of Oradell, but also carries traffic beyond to Route 17, the Parkway, etc. As you can see from this aerial shot, the bridge itself, the site is dominated by the Orodell Reservoir at the north. You have the linear park that extends along the Hackensack as it meanders through the area. And you also have New Jersey Transit's Pascack Valley line, which parallels the river as well. So the bridge itself is a vital link, as I said. Not only does it carry traffic east-west, it's also, vehicular traffic everybody thinks of. There's also pedestrian traffic, and I'll delve into a little bit more. The bridge also is a vital link for utilities. We zoom in to the project site. This will give you a snapshot, literally, of the immediate abutting property to the bridge. Again, as you can tell, it's dominated by the Hackensack River and the linear park that is Bergen County owned property. There's the Oradell train station is immediately west of the bridge site. Pascack Valley line runs north-south immediately west of the bridge site. You have commuter lots. There's a sidewalk that's carried along both the north and south side of the bridge for those people who want to walk into town, walk to the train, commute in and out of the city and such. So there's a lot of uses that this structure is required to function for. So it's not only just to carry vehicular traffic, carries pedestrian traffic, and it also carries utilities, as I'll show you in a little bit. The bridge itself was built in 1904. As bridge designers, we'd love to get 75, 100 years out of a structure is the current goal. So this bridge has far exceeded 117 years. Has been rehabilitated over time. It doesn't last for 117 years without having some work done on it. Bergen County had done work in the 70s as well as 1995, 96 area, but that's still 25 and 50 years ago. So the project is driven predominantly because of the deterioration of the structure itself. It's a single span bridge, but the overall length is about 100 feet, spans about 93 feet. It's what's called a through girder, and I'll show you a cross section in a moment, because it, as you know, you probably, as you drive across the structure, you'll notice the large two green elements that stick up out of the deck. Those are the girders that are the main supports carrying vehicular traffic down to the substructure. Substructure being the two masonry abutments that support the superstructure. The bridge carries Oradell Avenue, as we all know. It's got which has a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. It does have a lot of traffic, 25,000 vehicles per day. It's a heavy corridor. That is recognized. The bridge itself is a little bit narrower than the approach roadway. It's only about a 29-foot clear roadway, where the roadway on either side, curb to curbs, in the neighborhood of 40 feet. As you can see, what I meant before when I called it a through girder bridge, you'll see two main elements, two main girders, the two main supporting girders that carry the vehicular traffic, support and deliver the loads that are induced on this structure down to the substructure, down to those masonry supports. Outboard of the vehicular traffic, there's a sidewalk on either side to carry pedestrians. As I mentioned, this bridge also supports utilities. There's a 36-inch sanitary main that's supported beneath the deck, and there's also a gas main that's supported on the bridge. As I mentioned, a little bit about the project site itself. We know that the bridge is critical. It's a vital link in the area. It's surrounded, as I mentioned, by property that's owned by Bergen County. The Hackensack River this stretch is in essence a park, but it's dominated again by the Hackensack River, the flows in the Hackensack River. The areas surrounding can also be potential sites for endangered species. Often we will look at bridges that are on the navigable waterways as having tidelands grants. So that's also an influencing factor that we will look at. In addition to the physical environment, there's also significant cultural resources in the area. Although the bridge itself is not considered eligible for listing on the National Register, it is within the immediate confines, if you will, of other historically significant elements. One being the, the Orodell Railroad Historic District, And there's also an Oradell Avenue Grove Street Historic District that is there. So as we're developing alternatives and coming up with solutions for how best to address the condition of this structure, the project needs to account for these natural setting environments, not only the physical environment, but the built environment, to mitigate any impacts on those elements. In addition, I mentioned that, not only is the property along the river a park, the area abounds with parks. These, what I'll call it, the tiny little area between the commuter parking lot is actually a park setting. Wally Shearer Park is immediately west of the railroad station as well. So those are also historic properties or significant properties that need to be mitigated in the event of any impacts to them. Just wanted to show you a quick constraints map, as we call it. This map basically zooms in on the area around the bridge. And everything that's shown here is information or data that's readily available to us from the NJDOT's website and their database. So you can see again how the area is dominated by the Hackensack River. And as expected, that corridor, if you will, along the river is potential for endangered species, habitat for nesting birds and such, which all these factors need to be weighed in on as we develop alternatives. As I mentioned before, we've got commuter parking here, as well as further in across the tracks. And this tiny little triangular property here is actually park, as is all the abutting properties. Just a few general photos of the project site, looking east from the bridge, looking west from the bridge with the railroad to show you the immediate proximity of the railroad. There's also the immediate proximity of the driveway that provides access to the local community parking. And this is the area of the park. General views looking upstream and downstream of the Hackensack River from the bridge, again, just to give you that overview of the environment. Now, as I mentioned, the bridge also supports utilities, which are critical. So it serves as not only a link for vehicular traffic, but also a link for utilities. Carries a large sanitary sewer main, which, in addition to the gas main, and there's also a water line that actually extends below the Hackensack River on the north side of the bridge. These are also elements that, as we're developing these alternatives, investigating this structure, we need to make sure that we accommodate those utilities. These are all vital utilities. We work with the owners, we speak to the owners, we gather what information we can, so that as we're looking at, again, weighing pros and cons of alternatives, these are accounted for. As I mentioned, there's two that are already supported on the structure. There's also area lines, which must be accommodated. And you can imagine working on the structure with these area lines immediately adjacent to. We have to avoid impacts not only to the physical lines, but make sure that we do comply with high voltage proximity acts, etc. The bridge itself is classified as structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. I'll spend quickly try and touch base on this. Structurally deficient does not mean that the bridge is unsafe for use. It just means that it's one of its primary components. In this particular case, you can see this photo on the right, the superstructures, which is everything here, the bridge deck, these main girders that are then supported on the substructure, which is the photo on the left, the masonry abutments. The superstructure here is what's driving the overall poor condition rating of the bridge. I'll show you some more photos underneath. But because of the condition of these main girders being rated low, considered low, the bridge is identified as structurally deficient. But the bridge itself is not posted for any loads. It's not a situation that it's unsafe right now to be used at all. The concern here is that the county recognizes the importance of this structure and realizes that now's the time to start looking into how do they go about arresting these conditions and ensuring that this remains a vital link going forward. You'll also often hear bridge engineers talk about, or engineers in general talk about, the sufficiency rating. And as I've tried to think of that as purely on a scale of 1 to 100, what is the overall value or condition of this bridge on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being a bridge that's closed, with 100 being a brand new structure. So this bridge has a sufficiency rating of 37. Okay, so it'll give you a general scale of where does that fall on the, from a condition and capacity standpoint with respect to a brand new structure. As bridges get lower in their sufficiency rating, they become more eligible for federal funds. And as this number reduces, clearly there's more concerns about the condition of that structure. The bridge has 2 girders, as I mentioned, 2 main carrying girders, and as such, it's identified as a fracture critical structure. What that means is simply that if one of the girders were to fail, the system has no redundancy. In other words, the loads that that girder carries are not carried to any other member to then transfer those loads down to the substructure. And so in essence, in reality, the system, the structural system fails. That's why 2 girder systems are more of a concern to bridge engineers than multi-girder systems, which have that redundancy. Again, the project today is being driven by the condition of the superstructure of this bridge, the physical condition of the girders that have been here since 1904. And now, just because they've been here since 1904 doesn't mean that, okay, we should get rid of the structure in its entirety. But we need to be cognizant of what's driving the conditions. So again, the structure itself, as you can see here, is, as you would expect, anything that is steel that is exposed to the weather for 117 years is going to be subject to deterioration. You're going to get what's called pack rust. You can see how this is a built-up member, and that rust causes problems, as you all know, with steel members. The masonry substructure is also being eroded. The bridge passes a lot of water that comes down through over the spillway from the Oradell reservoir, sees high flows. Over the years, those flows erode the stones, erode the mortar, and therefore you see signs of degradation. Now, as I mentioned, we're here because we've started this data collection process. We've developed that public involvement action plan, which said, yes, we need to make sure that we go out and speak to the public. We met with local officials, got their initial concerns. We also then met with stakeholders, as Nicole said, and we're here tonight to do that exact same thing with you, to solicit your input, to try and answer any questions that we can answer tonight for you, and make sure that your voice is heard and involved in this process. Okay. Some of the concerns that you would expect local officials and stakeholders, utility owners and the public in the immediate proximity, I'm sure would have raised the exact same concerns that you did. Clearly, closing this bridge for long term is a significant concern. Everyone uses the structure. You want to see that traffic maintains its flow, that pedestrian service is maintained across the river, etc. Another key issue is emergency service. Emergency services in Orodell are located on the west side of the river. Yet, as we all know, there's a huge residential community on the east side. We want to make sure that those emergency services are addressed as we develop these alternatives. Similarly, you've got schools on both sides. St. Joseph's School was one of the stakeholders who participated in our last call. We heard from them. We wanted to make sure that, New Jersey Transit's operations are also not impacted, not only from impacting the transit itself, but you also have commuters that use that line. And clearly, we wanted to make sure that the borough had some concerns about, are there any immediate safety concerns that need to be addressed on the bridge? So that's why I spent a little bit of time trying to let everybody know that the bridge itself right now is fine to use. There's nothing driving it that needs to close it today. So this is the time to do the study. I highlighted a little bit earlier about purpose and need, and it being a critical document for us to develop. Purpose for projects that are bridge related are often very easy to document, very easy. It's generally driven by the condition of the bridge, and that's what's driving this project. That is in essence the purpose of this project, to make sure that the structural integrity of the bridge is maintained and or restored so that there is no more concerns about it for the next 100 years. The bridge is also defined as functionally obsolete, and that's being driven solely by the fact that the approach roadway to it is 40 feet and we're necked down to about 30 feet. So that necking down causes the bridge to be classified as functionally obsolete. So that's less of a concern, if you will, than the structural integrity, for obvious reasons, but it still is a driving factor for the purpose of the project. The items that are identified as need are items that justify the purpose of the project. In other words, what's the evidence that there is a problem? Well, the county is required to get biennial inspections on their structures every 2 years, obviously by the name biennial, to ascertain the condition of that structure. The results of that then formulate not only the condition rating of the structure, but its structural capacity to carry loads. And then again, that gets into developing the sufficiency rating. So those reports are used to determine the level of concern with these various structures that fall under the jurisdiction of Bergen County. They identified that this project is warranted to look at based on those condition reports. If in fact the project does, if nothing was done, eventually, not next week, but eventually, this structure would have to be closed. And no one wants to have that happen, given the significance of it within the region. Okay. In addition to the actual need to make sure that we address that purpose of the structural condition of the bridge, there's also goals and objectives. And those come out of feedback that we get from the local officials, from stakeholders, and from the public. And clearly the goals that have been defined so far are evident, and they're here. These stem right from what we have heard. So in addition to maintaining vehicular pedestrian traffic, avoiding New Jersey Transit, making sure that we come up with an economical solution or how do we build this as quickly as possible? How would we restore this as quickly as possible? We need to make sure that we minimize impacts to the surrounding environment, both the built environment and the natural environment, and make sure that we also want to make sure that obviously we accommodate and comply with Americans with Disability Act, as we obviously have a significant pedestrian and connectivity to parks and downtown. So we also wanted to let you know that, as I mentioned, this is the third meeting of the very beginning of the project. After today's meeting, we will utilize this information. We gathered your feedback, and we will go back and look at various alternatives that develop the solutions that weigh the various factors and account for the various factors. And then we will come back to the public again, through the local officials, through the stakeholders, and then to the public again, so that we can present the alternative that we feel best suits and addresses the problem. So this is quite a process, and it's not the last time that you will be allowed to provide input at all. As Nicole mentioned, there are links that you can provide your comments through. This team is available and readily available so that we can answer any questions, not only today, but going forward. Do not feel that if you didn't come up with your question tonight, something comes up later on, please feel free to bring that forward. So with that, Nicole, I think I'm going to turn it back over. I did kind of skip a slide on the purpose and need, I know, but I know
That's
we'll
okay.
get
We're going to
into,
go back to it.
yeah, I know we'll get into that a little bit, and that's why I didn't want to, I want to, like I said, spend more time. People don't need to hear from me so much. We need to hear from them. Thanks, Nicole.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Rick. And I just want to point out one thing, that it is in the written notices that
Yes.
many people received, that the comment period is through April 26th. So I'm not sure how it says April 1st. Maybe that's just a typo that happened somehow, but we are accepting comments on this phase of the project through April 26th. So no April Fools about it. You will have
Yep.
plenty of time to send us your feedback on the purpose and need statement. So what we want to do is go to that purpose and need statement first, since that is the purpose of the meeting. I'm going to read through them for anyone who is participating on the phone and would like to hear them, or maybe you joined us a little bit late. The project's purpose is to restore the structural integrity of the bridge and eliminate its classification as functionally obsolete in compliance with current design standards. And also, the project has two needs. The needs are that the bridge is classified as structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. And the other need is to the further deterioration would ultimately require closure of the bridge, severing a direct link between residential neighborhoods and downtown Oradell and connection to regional transportation network. So those are the purpose and need statements that we came up with, that the project team came up with. So we're going to get into our discussion about those in just a minute. I do want to go to a couple of questions and comments that came in through the chat box. And again, if you're just joining us, I would encourage everyone to please utilize the chat box and type in your questions and comments there as we go along. So, but we will give everyone the opportunity to speak verbally with the team as well. If you would like to speak verbally with the team or ask a question or comment, please just type unmute me or unmute for questions or whatever you'd like to write. Hello, Nicole. I want to say something. Anything will work. Or if you take your camera, put your camera on and you sort of wave to me like I'm doing to you, you can then, I can unmute you. All right. So I just want to start with the first question, comment that came in. It says, if the note regarding eligibility of the bridge is based solely on the 1991 bridge survey, that may be somewhat misleading. As the project will require evaluation under Section 106, it is quite possible that the Historic Preservation Office will now determine the bridge to actually be eligible for the National Register listing. So Rick, is there anything regarding that that we would want to address, or is there someone else who should comment on that?
I think Jim Herron is on, but from our team, but I will just comment real quickly. That's a true statement. Whoever made the statement, that is true. We must comply with 106. And yes, at the present time, the evidence that the bridge itself is ineligible for listing on the historic register, I believe, comes from that 1994 study that was done for the state. Oftentimes, the Historic Preservation Office agrees with that. Sometimes they then reconsider. So that is part of the 106 process. There will be coordination with Historic Preservation as the project moves forward. Yes, in fact, you can't even get permits, which we will certainly need a wetlands permit for this job, given the fact that the bridge is located and spans the Hackensack River. As part of that permit process in the next phase, Historic Preservation Office must be contacted and coordinated with. So whomever made the comment, it's a perfectly I don't want to say good comment. It is an excellent comment. It is true. That is true. It will be processed that way. Jim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. My background is more bridge than environmental. So I do want to open it up and let Jim Herron be able to comment.
Absolutely, Rick. And you know, by us having this meeting now, we're actually starting the Section 106 process for the project overall. But I did want to note that the opinion is based on the 1991 bridge survey. However, given the age of the bridge, it was already 50 years old at that point. So it's another 30 years. I don't know that making it even older necessarily makes it more eligible. But you know, absolutely, we'll be going through the evaluation process to determine if there's any reason that it should be listed. But we are basing that, you know, opinion on the 1991 report. Yes.
At this time, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. I have another comment / question that came in. It says, my understanding is that the Federal Highway Administration no longer uses the functionally obsolete definition to evaluate bridges. Will the bridge's capacity be evaluated as part of this project? The last NBI load ratings were performed during the Cycle 6 inspection.
Well, that's true. If again, that's another good comment. If the overriding factor for this project was quote unquote functional obsolescence, then we probably wouldn't be here. As I mentioned, the bridge's functionally obsolescence classification is driven solely by the fact that it is narrower than the approach roadway. If the bridge was in excellent condition, physically excellent condition, and there were no concerns with the superstructure, we wouldn't be here today. So it's not driven, it just happens to be in addition to being structurally deficient, it's also been tagged, if you will, or classified as functionally obsolete because of the fact that it now is narrower, provides a narrower roadway than its approaches. That's the only issue at hand there. So ideally, again, it depends on the solutions that are arrived at as to what makes sense. Depending on how you look at it, some folks look at bridges narrowing as a natural calming effect and slows traffic down. Others look at it as a safety concern. But to answer the comment, functional obsolescence, first of all, is not the driving factor. The question regarding the ratings, as one of the first things we do, we gather the most recent inspection reports that the county has at hand. So we actually have a draft of the report that was done, cycle 18, that was done in 2020. And if memory serves me correctly, the ratings of the structure were looked at as part of that analysis, evaluation. The bridge does not need to be load posted, so it carries all of the current rating vehicles. I don't want to get, I'm sure the person who asked the question knows what I'm talking about. Most people, aren't concerned about a particular rating vehicle, but the bridge was reevaluated for those new rating vehicles or the current rating vehicles. And at this time right now, the deterioration of the structure does not warrant it being load posted.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rick. And one of the comments and questions that we get often during these meetings is things about detours and how long it takes for construction, which we will go over once again. One of the comments and questions was This bridge was detoured for about 5 months during the rehabilitation work resulting from the floor beam failure in 1970. At that time, the disruption to traffic of approximately 9,000 ADT was significant. What are the thoughts about vehicular detours for this present project?
Well, as I mentioned, we're really still in the fact-finding portion of the project. Okay, today's call is really to allow people to raise that question. As we all know, no one wants to see traffic detoured. The fact that we have a two girder system complicates the ability to maintain traffic on part of the structure while part of it is removed or rehabilitated or repaired. Thus, I'm not surprised that when those repairs were done to the floor beams, which for those of you who don't know, just are steel elements that extend between the two main girders and support the deck, which you travel across as you drive across the bridge. If those floor beams require repairs and they are significant enough that you can't affect them in a overnight or short time period, you have to detour traffic. But to answer the question, in reality, where we're at right now is we will look at everything. So we will look at, is there a way that we can, again, address the structural condition of the bridge, address its functional obsolescence, but again, that's less, if we could fix it, that's the first driving factor. We are in the process of going out. We will probably start next month to actually gather some traffic data. We held off on it, quite frankly, because of the pandemic. We wanted to at least hopefully gather a little bit more, what I'll say is normal traffic flow across the bridge. We know that there's going to be a tremendous amount of vehicular traffic for obvious, given the setting. And we knew that people's first concern would be, okay, if you want to repair this structure and you close the road, what are you going to do with the traffic? Okay, so we didn't do that traffic analysis day one because we knew we were in the pandemic. So now we will go out and gather some actual traffic data. But we will look at detours. I mean, we have, in this phase, we need to look at every viable option and then weigh its pros and cons. So for example, if we could come up with a solution that we could repair the structure or restore its integrity or replace it within a narrow window of time, and we bring that to the public and the public says, you know what, we are willing to live with that narrow window of time to affect the repairs, and that requires a detour, that may be the most prudent course of action and the preliminary preferred alternative. Again, the goal is that when we get through this phase of the study, we have public support for the preferred alternative and we don't have any fatal flaws. So we will look at, we don't have any preconceived notions, I guess is the other way to say it. We're not going to say, well, the only way to address this condition at this bridge is to detour traffic. So we have to look at everything, and we will.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Can you bring up the slide that shows the 4 phases of the study?
Sure.
Please.
I can try that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as Rick mentioned, we are now in the local concept development phase, and we will be here for a good year to year and a half, right? And Rick had mentioned earlier that each of those other phases, the next phase is preliminary engineering, and then final design, and then we get to construction. That period often takes many, many years to get to, and it also requires funding. So one of the questions is, would there be a time period where utilities would have to be shut off to residential homes in the area, for instance, sewer, gas, electric, etc.? How long would you anticipate it taking to plan the new bridge and receive funding and permits before the construction actually starts?
Okay, let's do the straightforward question first. As part of this phase, we coordinate with all the utility owners. So just like finding out facts about the bridge and the environment, we want to make sure that we have information and contact with those owners to determine, can there, in the event that we need to temporarily de-energize or shut them down, do they have an alternative way to make sure that public services are maintained? That's the primary goal. So if the question, the concern is, will we lose our power? Will we lose our water? Will we lose our sanitary? That will not happen to the extent that it causes problems, I guess, is the long and the short of it. We will work out accommodations preliminarily, or concepts, in this phase. Those will get carried forward. Everything that's done in this phase gets documented in what's called the concept development report, so that as we move forward, the information and the discussions that we've had with those owners, utility owners, carries forward through those phases, so that we don't, like I said, we don't get to a subsequent phase where there's a fatal flaw and we said, oh, you know what, we forgot to talk to Suez about their water lines, and now we have a problem. What are we going to do? That's the whole premise of, that's why this phase takes long. We want to make sure that we don't miss anything. So to answer the question about utilities will be maintained. To answer the question about how long these phases can take, as we said, the concept development, we're due to deliver our preliminary preferred alternative and our summary report in June of 2022. Depending on funding, as I mentioned, preliminary engineering, again, depending on, as someone pointed out, the coordination with historic preservation, there's parks, the 106 process is lengthy. If there are impacts to the park property itself, the park property can be Green Acres encumbered. That is also another process that we must go through in that phase. So preliminary engineering, which in essence you would obtain buy-in on the permitting needs and the environmental document that's required through NEPA. That can be a lengthy process, again, depending on the impacts of the project. That could be another 2 years. Final design then could be another year and a half, 2 years, again, depending on the complexity of the design, coordination with utility owners, if there is any right-of-way needs, impacts to property, those types of things. So all of these silos can take quite a bit of time, depending again on funding and depending on what the impacts of the project are.
Okay, great. Now we can go back to our purpose and need slide, and now is the time we can open up the discussion a little bit and ask people to, again, either type into excuse me, either type into the chat box your question or type in that you would like to be unmuted to ask the question verbally, or you can turn your camera on and wave to me and I will call on you to get your questions answered. But we have the goals and objectives up on the screen here as well, and this is something that, again, the team is looking for your feedback on. And those goals and objectives are to maintain vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic during construction, to maintain emergency services support within the borough of Oradell, to avoid impacts to NJ Transit's Pascack Valley line and utilities, to seek to identify an economically viable method of expedited construction, to avoid or minimize social, economic, and environmental impacts, and lastly, to accommodate multimodal users and ensure ADA compliance. So does anyone who is participating tonight have any thoughts or feedback for us in regards to these goals and objectives or the purpose and need statement? I see we've got another question in the chat box. Are you considering banning disruptions to the road usage on Oradell Avenue east of the bridge? This road has been dug up by utility companies repeatedly over the years. It would seem to me that you cannot have additional disruptions while this construction to the bridge is going on.
Well, I guess the best way to answer that is that, you know, we are still a long way away from construction, number one. Number two, you know, we would be coordinating. We may, you know, our role is to get us through concept development. Once concept development is completed, the project then is returned from NJTPA to the county, and the county moves forward with the subsequent design phases in coordination with DOT and the NJTPA funding side. I really don't want to speak for the county, but, you know, I'm sure that the county would look to say what other projects would be advancing at the same time. Are there any conflicts between those projects? Does it benefit us to do multiple projects at the same time? Are there advantages to do that? So that you, as the person who made the comment pointed out, you're not continuously opening the road up and impacting traffic. You don't want to replace the bridge, do some improvements, and then, you know, a couple months after that, find out, oh, we should, you know, do some more utility work. So I'm sure all that coordination would be handled at the county level from the standpoint of minimizing impacts to Oradell Avenue.
Great. What other questions or comments would anyone like to verbalize or type in at this time?
I'd just like to chime in as an elected official in the borough. Obviously, one of our main concerns is, and as you put out in the purpose and needs section for our emergency services, there are only two main ways to get across to this other side of Orodell, either through New Milford Avenue or through Oradell Avenue. We also have a significant burden related to any emergencies that would take place at the water treatment plant or the Orodell Reservoir. So I know that there is community concern over maintaining the ability for our emergency responders to get across as quick as possible to address any emergency situations that might come up during the, as you have said, it's going to be a lengthy process. It's not a quick fix to replace a bridge. So any assurances you could give would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I think from an assurance standpoint, the intent of these meetings that we've had already with you as local officials, as well as stakeholders in the community, having met with the utility owners as well in the last meeting, clearly that's the primary goal, is to do what we can and make sure that as many of these goals that have been identified are addressed, and make sure that this isn't done in a vacuum, I guess the best way to put it. We're trying to make sure that we address the conditions of the bridge while simultaneously balancing the concerns of the community and engaging the community so that the project has public support. And by that, I mean that, okay, everyone said this is the most appropriate thing to do. In other words, how can we best address the condition of the bridge while minimizing impacts? Are there times of the year that we can do certain things from a utility standpoint that has less impact on that utility? Are there things we can do to make sure that resources are provided on both sides of the river from an emergency services standpoint? Even in the event, if we were to narrow the window down to replace the structure as expeditiously as possible, you still want to make sure that those resources are still accounted for and addressed. However narrow that window is, I guess, is the best way to put it. So, you know, people may say, well, if it's over X amount of months, that's a major concern. Well, even it could be a major concern even if it's over a weekend or weeks. So emergency services is always critical. We're always on board with speaking to local officials and the public, and that just carries throughout the project, regardless of what phase you're in. That's why it's so critical to get through this one and say that certain things have been identified, which the town has agreed to, and the key players have agreed to, that this makes the most amount of sense to do.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is Mayor Diane DiDio. I just wanted to assure Council President Schoenberg that we raised these concerns very early on in our initial meeting back in November. And we explained very clearly to everybody involved that we have had situations where the Elm Street Bridge is unavailable. And if this bridge were out while the Elm Street Bridge is washed out for some reason or underwater, there would be no access whatsoever between the two sides of our town. And we had emergency services on at that call as well, police and fire. And I think, you know, that's part of the reason that they include that as one of the concerns in this process. Thank you.
Yep. Yes, we definitely heard that loud and clear, as would be expected. I mean, there are certain, I don't want to speak, there are certain goals and objectives that I think, regardless of any project, anyone can look at and say, these are concerns. You don't have to be a bridge engineer or a civil engineer. It's just, I hate to say it, common sense.
Another question is in the chat box, and it says, if the bridge were to fail before all of the planning phases are complete, are there methods to fast track a replacement?
Well, that's probably a little bit premature, because that's why the project has started at this time, as opposed to, you know, the goal is to, again, avoid that situation. That's why the project was brought forth, I'm sure, by, again, I don't want to speak for Bergen County, but I'm sure that's why they brought forth this project, to get the funding implemented so that they could look at this so that they don't end up in that situation. There's always, you know, should something actually happen, there's always, you know, options to, there are temporary bridges that can be installed, can be rented and installed at a moment's notice, those types of things. So, but the goal of this project and this process, if you will, is to avoid that type of scenario.
Is there anyone else from our project team, maybe from the county or NJTPA or any other team members, that have any additional points that they want to bring up before we move on to additional questions and such from the public?
Thanks, Nicole. This is Joe Bellotti with the Planning Department of Bergen County. I would like to thank Rich and yourself and the other project team and Martin Maver in our office, our bridge engineer, and everybody else that worked very hard to get to this point. And also the Borough of Oradell. They are no strangers to work with the county. I know maybe like 10, 15 years ago, we worked on a TPA project. It was a very complicated project as far as getting the funding in place for Kinderkamak Road, safety improvement, Kinderkamak Road. And I'm not sure if anybody from that time is still here today, but I remember 15 years ago, we did work. We acquired the money from the same, or the funding from the same funding source, which is North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, and we did safety improvement of the roads. We did the ADA ramps and crossing and islands in the middle, among other things. So we are grateful to Oradell. I guess one of the criteria we look for when we apply to fund the projects through the county is the cooperation of the town. And I know Oradell, out of many towns, they set an example doing this. And through the process, nobody was chosen by the TPA and DOT and the county. and they're doing a good job advancing this project, explaining this project. My apology, I was 5 minutes late. I could not log in for some reason. So I missed the first 5 or 7 minutes of the meeting. I'm just thankful for everyone for their effort and time putting up with us on a Thursday night. Greatly appreciate the input, and probably the individual that made the comments early on, they're probably engineers, probably they're seem like bridge engineers as well, or structural engineers. So I appreciate the level of sophistications. I'm not a bridge engineer myself. I work for the planning department, but Martin Maver in our office, he is a senior bridge engineer. And if there's anything the county would do to help, I assure you that we would do everything possible. And just to address one quick question about the roadway opening, utility works, everything is coordinated through the county's road opening permits. So there should not be multiple roadway opening that would interfere or interrupt the circulation of traffic at any one given time. And again, thank you everyone. If there's anything myself or Martin or the project team can answer, we'll be more than happy to do this. The planning department involvement early on to get funding in place, which is a complicated task. We successfully bid for the job. We were awarded the contract, and we turned it over to Dewberry, and Dewberry would be the lead design engineers going forward. Thank you. I'm not sure, Martin, if you have anything to add.
Get to the church on time and her waiting.
Yes, Joe, this is Martin Maver from Bergen County. Let me just my camera on here. All right, sorry. Yeah, so one thing I'll just add to is that what we've done before for emergency vehicles crossing the bridge during closures or detours, lots of times the emergency services have also coordinated with the neighboring towns to cover for them or to leave some of the emergency vehicles on the other side of the bridge for a short period of time. There's all kinds of ways to coordinate and try to make sure you have coverage on both sides of the bridge during a detour or temporary outage.
Okay.
Okay.
There's another question that came in, and it says, among the goals and objectives, is there any study or consideration regarding racial justice or the impact this project will have on different socioeconomic groups as opposed to just the general impact?
Absolutely. As part of that data collection, we do look to, and as part of this public outreach, we are striving to connect with everyone, regardless of income levels, etc. We're trying to make sure that those that use this structure have their voice heard, I guess is the best way to say it. The key to that is, the word I'm struggling for is, it comes down to making sure that we don't impact one group disproportionately than another, as you can imagine. So the question becomes is, as we're going through the alternatives, would one alternative impact that community any different than anyone else? This is the best way I could phrase it, I suppose. In other words, if people are walking to the train station, as opposed to driving to the train station, for argument's sake, we need to make sure that we're not only maintaining vehicular traffic and ignoring pedestrian traffic because maybe someone who takes the train does not drive and does not park. They may ride a bike, they may walk. And so that kind of ties into that avoiding impacting one group versus another. To me, that's really what it comes down to, is you want to make sure that you don't disproportionately affect a group over another. So yes, that is always a concern. If there are, we're always looking for ways to make sure that we reach out to everyone in the public. So if there are groups, community groups, et cetera, that's part of what we're also trying to obtain. So if there are groups that we have missed through this public involvement action plan that whoever raised the question can't put us in touch with, so that we make sure that everyone's voice is heard, that would be very appreciated.
Absolutely. And that's part of the ongoing process of what we're doing here, is to really ask you all, the public, is there anyone who we're missing? Are we reaching everyone? Is there any special groups that we need to look at that may need accommodations? And that means all different types of accommodations. So we want to make sure that that's included, because environmental justice is a huge component to all of the NJTPA projects. And so, yes, we are always looking at those factors in this phase and beyond. So thank you for that comment. All right, we have another question or comment. You indicated that you already started the historic regulatory process and also indicated the potential Green Acres issues. Is Section 4F also a part of this early scoping process?
Again, I'll probably just, if it's okay, Jim, I'll make a general stab at it, and then I'll let Jim get into more. During the concept development, we screen the project for Section 4F impacts. So again, we have identified Section 4F properties in the area of this bridge. And so as we're developing, again, those alternatives, we need to make sure, or we need to assess which alternative do alternatives have Section 4F impacts? If so, to what extent? Is one alternative significantly more than another, et cetera? So that, again, as we work our way through the assessment of the various alternatives, those impacts are identified and then can be accounted for properly as we go forward, as the project advances forward. So there's really, at this point, the question of how much impact will there be for 4F, we don't know, because we have not identified the alternative that is the most prudent way to move forward. But as we're assessing those various alternatives, that Section 4F assessment is identified. Jim?
Hey, Rick, it's Jim here. Just to, you pretty much summed it up properly there. You noted that there's numerous historic and park facilities in the vicinity, not directly touching the bridge necessarily, but they're there. So the point is, during the environmental screening process, that we identify these resources as potential 4F resources, and then the knowledge of where those are located helps inform the selection of the alternatives. At the end of the concept development process, when a PPA is selected, we would then be able to know whether there's going to be a 4F impact or not.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, back to our questions and comments. At this point, we are an open format meeting open to all comments and questions that anyone has about the project. So, and we are here until 8 p.m. So we have plenty of time to discuss whatever needs to be discussed. And just for those of you watching on TV tonight or watching it on the replay, I want to reiterate again that the public involvement process is open throughout this entire phase of this study. And again, the website that you can go to is Oradell Avenue Bridge.com. And on that website, you will find the contact form, where you can send a message to the team, and that's the best way to reach us. So if you have questions, feedback, anything that comes up, we want to reiterate how important it is for the public to participate in this process. Also, Rick, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the banner and things like that.
Sure. I mean, hopefully, for those people who live near the bridge or travel the bridge, either on bicycle or walking or by car, you probably noticed that we did put a pair of banners out, one on either approach to the bridge, per se. And that, again, was another method that we were trying to use in order to reach out to as many in the community as we could. You know, we wanted to make sure that if there were people who were dropped off by someone else and just, you know, take the train, but may not live right in that area, that they would have that opportunity to be aware that the project is there, see the link to the website, and be able to provide input. In addition to the banner, you know, as Joe said, we've had tremendous cooperation from Orodell. They've worked to help us reach out to the community, make sure that we have in fact engaged as many folks in Orodell as possible. There was there within the calendar that Orodell sends out every year that we had were able to put in a little blurb, if you will, that would, you know, notify people about the website. As Nicole said, we've also sent out mailers. We've also, there is a link from Orodell's website to the hub with the NJTPA website, where the project's website is located, so that connection exists. We were able to get Orodell's public television to participate and assist us in getting this message out. So I think that's why when someone raised the question about EJ communities, we want to make sure that, you know, we felt through the public involvement action plan that we had developed, we had some good resources and great coordination with Orodell started. We want to make sure that continues. That public involvement action plan, again, carries through with this project through all those phases again. So it tags along, if you will, with as the project graduates from this phase into preliminary engineering and FD and beyond, that public involvement action plan stays with it and is revisited and grows, if you will, to make sure that communication is ongoing throughout the life of the project. So if there are any other suggestions, anything along those lines as to how we could improve upon making sure that we do engage the public, that would also be extremely helpful. Please feel free to let us know.
That's right. And if there's any additional residents or stakeholders within 500 feet of the bridge or the surrounding areas, you know, we've identified several stakeholders that live and have businesses in the areas closest to the bridge, but certainly we can't reach every single person. We do our best. So it's our goal to include everyone in this process. That's very important to the team. So if for some reason you say, oh, my neighbor did not receive a notice, but I did, you know, can you please add him or her to this list? You know, that's something that I would love to know. I will definitely add them to our database. It can be their email address or their mailing address, whatever is preferred, but I'm sending out email reminders for the meetings. And as I said, we have a flyer that we send out via mail to all of the stakeholders. So this is something that was sent to all of the people that live closest to the bridge and distributed via email, the website, etc. So we've done everything we can to try to get the word out about this round of meetings, and this will only continue as we get to our second round, which again is where we will talk about the preferred alternative, the team will come up with some concepts and ask you once again to provide your feedback about those concepts. So that's part of this phase that we're in right now. And we're not going to be here in, several years when we get to the next phase and the next phase and eventually to construction. We're just laying the foundation for this so-called house that we're building together. We're just the beginning phase. So it's most important during this phase to provide your feedback, to ask your questions. This is the local concept development phase is the best, and I think it's most important for the success of a project. So that's why we want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this process. So continue to share the website with people, continue to send us messages through the website and provide us with your feedback, because that's what's going to make this a successful project. So we still have about a half an hour left. And again, we will be here throughout the next 30 minutes. If you've heard enough of the presentation and you don't have any questions, you're certainly welcome to say goodbye and head off for the night, but we will still be here. And again, that website is Oradell Avenue Bridge.com. It is linked to the Oradell website, and we appreciate Orodell's assistance in getting the word out about this. Any additional comments or questions are certainly welcomed.
Well, I'll throw in my 2 cents, Nicole. I know that you had mentioned that we may not be here in the next phases of the projects, but my goal would be that, we, as I said, when we conclude this phase of the project, that yes, we have zero fatal flaw, everyone's on board, agrees it's the right way to go. For my own personal pride, I would prefer to carry this through all the way to construction, just to see the process through and again, see what everyone has agreed upon be carried out, if you will. As an engineer, that's, you want to see the things that you're involved with be built and for the benefit of the community. So as Nicole said, this is, from an engineer standpoint, this is also the most critical part, the fun part, if you will, because you do engage with the community. You're not just cranking numbers, so to speak. And this is where you get to actually work with the community in developing a solution. And then if you're lucky enough that you get to carry it all the way through to construction and see it built, that's like the icing on the cake.
If you're still with us, you can certainly just unmute yourselves at this point and provide some feedback or ask your questions. In fact, there's a question that just came in that says, when will there be actual designs to review? And that will be our next public meeting and our next stakeholder meeting. And that will be, do we have a rough idea of when we anticipate that, Rick, in terms of, is it going to be summer? Is it going to be fall?
No, it would be in the fall. It would be later this year.
Okay.
I'm just taking that peek at the schedule right now. Yeah, it would be towards the end of this year. But yes, now we will then, we'll take these objectives, we'll take the purpose and need, and we will develop different options, different alternatives that meet the purpose and need, and then strive to meet as many of these goals as possible, work back and forth with stakeholders, work back and forth with the local officials, the county, TPA, et cetera, and then formulate that grouping of alternatives. And then we'll walk our way through that with a matrix so that we can compare pros and cons of each, And then we'll be back again. We will go meet, once we get through that, we'll, as a team, and we vet what we think may make the most sense, if you will. We'll meet again with local officials, present those options to the local officials, and kind of repeat the process, if you will. Get their comments on that, and we would take any of those comments, bring those to the stakeholders, to do that again, that same process. And so that by the time we get to the next meeting with the public, we will be able to walk everybody through those various alternatives, the pros and cons, and present the logic, if you will, to get to what would hopefully be the preliminary preferred alternative. So,
how much input could there be from the local design community, like handsome local architects, for example? That's great.
Hey. Well, hey, look at me. I mean, we can use all the good-looking people that want to participate, just to balance things out. But I mean, that's the again, the premise of this is to get public input. Someone brought up the concern, not the concern, but the issue about the Historic Preservation Office weighing in on the fact of the bridge itself being historic. While they may ultimately decide that the bridge itself is not historic, as I mentioned, we have historic facilities or culturally significant facilities that are in the setting of this bridge. And so oftentimes, Historic Preservation Office will come back and make suggestions as to the ways to mitigate visual impacts on the culturally significant adjacent properties. And that often entails architectural treatments, paint colors, things along those lines. So while we don't necessarily engage an individual, that individual can certainly, I would think, be more than open to make suggestions to Orodell, send any suggestions to Orodell. That could certainly be passed through to this team and to the county.
And that's really also part of the stakeholder process. When we ask people to be stakeholders or they volunteer to be stakeholders, those people are usually the ones who are the most vocal, who have very specific ideas or concepts that they want to discuss with the team. I've worked on projects where our stakeholders come up with brilliant, amazing ideas that they would like to see, and that input gets molded and shaped by the team. And so that's why, again, your input is so important. So I think that if I'm sure you're already signed up to be a stakeholder and have been invited to the stakeholder meetings, but for anyone who is watching or listening, that is an option for you as well. If you have a lot of input and you have a lot of ideas and concerns and things like that, then you're considered a stakeholder and you're welcome to join us in this process. So we welcome you to email us. Again, there's several ways to contact us. If you've received all of our mailers and emails, well, if you've gotten the emails, you definitely know who I am, because I'm the one who always sends them. I'm Nicole. I'm the community involvement facilitator. And the contact information is on the flyer that you received. You can contact us. The information is at the bottom. We actually put Joe Bellatti's information, and he's the one you heard from earlier. He's from the county. You can contact him via email. You can contact me via email. You can go to the website and use the contact form. So plenty of ways to reach us. Any other thoughts or comments or questions from anyone on the line tonight?
Nothing from the county. Just thank you for everyone.
Nothing from TPA, but we'll stay on the line in case someone has a question.
Yep.
Rich, does that meeting have to, do we all have to be here till 8 o'clock? Or if no one has any question, do we adjourn, or we just need to be
No,
here till 8 o'clock? What's the procedure? I'm not sure, Sasha, maybe you can shed some light on this.
yeah, my understanding, Joe, is we need to remain here in case someone should get on at, say, 5 of 8 even and want to raise a question. Even though we're virtual, it's much like if we were in a public setting where people could come at whatever time is convenient for them, is my understanding. So, but yeah, depending on what everybody else's schedule is, I am fine waiting through to 8 o'clock. That's not a problem. So, I mean, everything is recorded. And Nicole will be here with me at the very least, so we would document any comments we receive regardless. So that's probably the big thing. I know that it's hard for a lot of people to stay on for, not for 2 hours, but even for the public, they may just have only a certain window that they can jump on and then make their comment and then jump back off, and that's fine. But
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
So just Adam and Martin, you don't have to stay here. I'm here. So you guys, you're free to do whatever, and we will be here till 8 o'clock.
And Rick, we'll leave the, can you go to the last screen, which has the contact information? And we'll
Yes.
leave that up.
Okay. Yeah, I should.
Joe's email and my email.
Yep. And
Nicole, I'm sorry, Rich, Mayor DiDio here. Just reiterate that there will be comments through April 26th because this slide is up now and people may not have heard it earlier.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, I was just going to say that same thing. For the life of me, couldn't tell you why I missed vetting that. I apologize.
That's
You probably
okay.
looked at it so many times that it just didn't jump out at you. That's okay.
Well, I mean, if Martin and Joe are still on, first of all, we appreciate your kind words, Joe, for the work we've done so far. It's been our pleasure. And like I said during these presentations, I'm here kind of as the point person, if you will, but by all means, do not feel like, as I've tried to say as we've gone through these presentations, I don't want to speak for the county. So as I know I'm sure you both know that you have absolute control and right and anything to jump in at any time to clarify some of the statements. I want to make sure that we get the right message out to everything and to everyone. And there's certainly a lot more items and not items, but a lot more involvement that that I may not know. So I guess I just want to reiterate, please feel free to contribute, to answer, to weigh in as you just both desire to.
Thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
Rick, while we're on that, may I ask a question? Could you clarify during this first process in the LCD, will we be getting a determination on the historic eligibility of the bridge? Is that something we'll have a definite answer within this first?
Typically, I mean, and Jim's still on, I think. Typically, I don't think they would weigh in because they may want us to do a little bit more research, which is typical, or the entity to do a little bit more research into the information. and that's generally done, would be done as part of the environmental document that's obtained in the next phase. But from what I'm hearing, there seems to be some potential or some concern that the findings of the earlier report that said, you know, the structure doesn't warrant individual eligibility may come into question. So it may be something that we can engage them now on, Jim. I'm not sure what you think, whether we could ask for an initial review or consideration of whether or not the bridge itself has any eligible features and such.
What we would need to do, and that really typically comes in the preliminary engineering phase, is to actually do that bridge survey. So that would come in the preliminary engineering phase. I mean, if there was a compelling reason that needed to be advanced, that would be one thing. But typically that's done in preliminary engineering. And the point that we would get to with the cultural resources consultation process at the end of the LCD process is we would establish the APE, or the area of potential effects, in association with the PPA. Because you got to realize that the PPA comes at the end of the LCD process, and that's when you make that determination to do the additional studies. So it gets a little premature to start doing your historic surveys prior to knowing exactly what areas you want to be looking at. You know, of course, the bridge, in any bridge replacement project, is going to be something you're looking at, but you want to determine what all the historic resources are that need to be looked at, and then you can research those and document those together at one time rather than breaking that process up.
Right. I guess Martin's just asking, would historic preservation kind of give you an initial or a more, I guess, an updated assessment of, you know, just by looking at the condition of the bridge, looking at the year it was built, looking at the available plans, those types of things, irrespective of its setting, Jim, just the bridge itself. You know, you got a two girder system, you got a through girder system, they're fairly prevalent. I don't, from what I recall, while the bridge itself has been identified as a memorial bridge, a veterans memorial bridge, I don't think, you know, I'm not sure whether it has any individual significance from who the designer was or you know, the fabricator of the structure that would warrant individual eligibility. It could be, you know, deemed a contributing resource to one of the districts. But I guess what Martin's saying, would they give us an indication, even an initial indication, that the bridge itself, you know, nothing's changed since that 94 assessment that would warrant them revisiting it, which I think was one of the comments that basically came through tonight is, you know, just because the 94 report is out there doesn't mean that that's the end all be all, which we both know, which we all know. I'm just not sure. Have you been involved with a job where they've given you that kind of that initial take, if you will?
I can't speak for one where they've gone and kind of reversed the decision from the 94 report. Not that they haven't done that. I mean, what I'm saying is, let's going asking for an updated opinion from that time frame without the submission of a new bridge survey report, because the HPO is not going to have enough information to base a change in opinion on until we were to submit them a study to base that on. Right. So I don't think they would really be able to say too much unless, you know, it's come out that there's, you know, they know of a historic significance of the bridge, or it's a unique type, or you know, so many other typical examples of that type of bridge have all been you know, replaced, and this is the last one. But I don't think that's the case here.
Right. Yeah.
And even if that were the case, you would have to go through the process of really doing the bridge survey and doing that historic documentation to give them something to evaluate.
Right, right. I hear you. They're gonna want it updated, if you will, to get information that they could then assess.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. So hopefully for those who raised questions tonight, hopefully we answered them. Um, and if not, if you feel that the answer could still warrant some additional information or additional input, by all means, feel free to submit clarification or send an email to us or to Nicole, and then we can make sure that we do fully address comments or questions. It's always important to make sure that we understand your question properly so that we answer it properly. So hopefully I didn't misinterpret anybody's question in that regard.
Is
That's
there
a
any
great
lines presently thought about as far as the replacement bridge?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat it? I didn't hear the whole part of the question.
Are there any potential designs of what the bridge might look like, even if it's not set in stone yet?
No, not really. That's probably what we will start to brainstorm pretty shortly. There are certain factors that will probably drive some of the structure type. As you can imagine, the goal would, as we've mentioned, is to try and avoid impacts to New Jersey Transit's rail line. So that means that we would not, although from a standpoint of getting some further protection to the roadway and to the bridge itself during storm events that have been brought up, raising the profile of Oradell Avenue dramatically probably would introduce significant impacts to transit, depending on how high the profile was raised. That's why it's going to be important for us to also speak to Suez from that standpoint. The utility authorities, to see what can be done with the profile of their facilities that are there, what that storm that has been recorded or been reported by the town as to when they were having problems getting access across the structure, how much water was there at the time, those types of things. The advantages of a through girder bridge is that it gives you a fairly slender structure depth, as it's called, which is literally the depth that is from the top of the roadway surface to the lowest portion of the framing. The fact that it's a through girder or a two girder and through girder system means that allows you to provide a shallow structure below the deck, because the loads are transferred into the floor beams, and those floor beams are carried back. The loads in those floor beams are carried back to the two main girders that are set outside. And so it has disadvantages in that it's not redundant. As I mentioned, you lose one of those girders, you've lost your framing, your structural members. But it has the advantage of providing a shallow structure depth. So it is still considered a viable alternative. There are through girders that are still, we use them traditionally now more so than ever, or not more so than ever, but more so. They remain a very useful structure type for railroads, for example, because raising track profiles, which have a very flat grade, even a nominal amount requires that you, I don't want to say, well, I guess the best way to describe it, you have to chase that profile, that increase in profile at one point down the track. And railroad tracks have very flat grades, desirable. So through girders, which provide that shallow structure depth, are very well liked by railroads. Even though they recognize that it does have a drawback of having non-redundant members. Not to get too much into the weeds, but these particular girders here are what called built-up members, where you have riveted connections between the components that the girder was fabricated from. So they're actually considered what's called internally redundant, meaning that the connections between those members, if in fact there is significant deterioration of a plate or of an angle, that you do get some redundancy in that system internally, where it will overstress a plate. So you may notice some deflection before you have significant failure of the member. If this was all welded girder, then the propagation of that failure is much quicker. So when you talk about redundancy, you can also then go to internal redundancy being an influencing factor, which, is probably more than you care to know about structures. But so to answer your question, that's really where we're at right now, is start looking at the pros and cons of various structure types that would then balance these various constraints or needs or opportunities, depending on how you want to look at them, to come up with a structure that kind of balances everything. This structure being through girder is through girder for a reason. It's probably driven by the fact that, they wanted a shallow structure depth, and it made perfect sense, and it was a very common structure type when this bridge was built.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I would say for the most part, the problems that we have had with flooding is basically due to the fact that Suez has opened the floodgates. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had that problem.
Right.
They've been criticized at times for, like in the last storm, not opening them early enough to let a certain amount of water through before it became a problem. So no matter how big you would want or how much you would want to raise the bridge, it still doesn't take into effect that they can open the floodgates completely And any bridge you put there is going to be washed.
Yeah, yes. I mean, they obviously that, as we, saw in the aerial map, the presence of the reservoir there and the spillway there that controls flow through this, even in the natural storm events, there probably is a significant amount of flow that comes down through the hack. It's evidenced by debris that you see, in some of the photos that we have up, that where debris is trapped on the, in between the framing and the utilities. That often, the fact that there's that 36-inch sanitary main below the structure also does not help the hydraulic characteristics of this crossing. So again, those are things where, when we do speak to the utility owners, we want to know, what, if anything, do you have any, I mean, from the utility standpoint, even, they're not, I'm sure they don't want their utility inundated. The last thing they would want is to have, significant debris and or flow impact their utility such that they've got problems with their utility. And so there, through this conversation, there may be things that we can do with that utility main and or the gas main, et cetera, to better protect it, and also, remove it and enhance the flow characteristics through here, so that there's not a potential to trap debris. Because any debris that gets trapped on the structure, obviously the flow is going to go somewhere. It just builds up till it decides, okay, I can find a low point, and runs around the structure. So the bridge, I've worked on jobs where the bridge is high and dry, but you cannot get to the bridge because the low point is actually on the approach. So that's can be as much of a concern to the resources of the emergency services folks, as the bridge in itself being inundated with water. The approach can oftentimes get flooded, and they can't get to the bridge to begin with. So just raising the bridge doesn't necessarily rectify the situation all the time. So you really have to look at the whole environment. As you pointed out, you've got a spillway that water can be, oftentimes, the reservoir is getting too high, and there's concern about, additional heavy rains through storms, and they have to release water so that they don't get problems with their system. So regardless of the project, big bridge, small bridge, they all have their own little nuances and own little concerns and constraints that have to get balanced, which is a great part of this alternative analysis, if you will, where you do have to weigh all those pros and cons and see, what's the risks associated with each, and what's the opportunity and what's the benefit, and you can work through it with everybody involved, and so that you can, like I said, you end up with a solution that has been bought into. People have acknowledged, everyone acknowledges what its benefits are, what its risks are, what its, you get the best, if you will, what is the best alternative that makes the most sense at this particular location for the particular constraints that it faces on a regular basis.
All right, we only have a few minutes left, so last call for comments, questions, feedback, etc.
Today, anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Before we close the meeting.
Right.
Again, the contact information is up on your screen, and comments for the purpose and need statements will be accepted through April 26th. Our website is Oradell Avenue Bridge.com. And we want to thank everybody who participated in tonight's meeting. We will be in touch with you to provide additional information in the coming months when we get to our next round of meetings. You'll all receive the notices again via mail and email. and we encourage you to stay in touch with us via the website.
And I guess, Nicole, if someone, I mean, most people are electronic now, but if someone should prefer mailings, then please let us know that would be your preferred method of contact, even if you do use, your computer and your cell phone. But if you do want hard copy, by all means, let us know. We'll make sure we get the notices out to you via regular mail.
Yes,
as well.
absolutely. Thank you, Rick, for reminding me of that. Anyone who requests hard copies of the information can just send an email to myself or Joe Bellotti, and we will process that information and get that to you, because we realize not everyone is connected to the internet and may not have access to that. So we can definitely share printed materials if requested.
Nicole, would you like to have the next meeting broadcast as well?
Yes, in the fall when we have our next round, Nick, I will definitely, I would love to have the same availability for the public meeting. And again, that we don't have the date set, but it will probably be fall or.
Be between fall and later in the end of the year, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay, great.
as soon as we have that information, I will definitely coordinate with you again. That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's very much appreciated.
Yes, we want to give a special thank you to Nick and the OPTV crew for helping us to get the word out about this project, and all of the Oradell individuals, including the mayor, who have been wonderful in sharing this information to get the word out. So we're just about at 8 o'clock. I'm going to formally close the meeting at 8. And I want to again thank everyone for your time tonight in participating in our first public meeting for the Oradell Avenue Bridge study. Again, our website is oradellavenuebridge.com, and we look forward to hearing from you via email now and in the future. And with that, I will formally close our meeting and thank you for participating. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.